All right, so let's get to the topic, the actual topic for tonight, which is emotional intelligence for project managers. So I had a bad sense of humor failure today because I had this meeting, and then after the meeting I thought that I had a presentation for emotional intelligence that I could just use. And then I looked at my hard drive and the presentation is gone. So I know I had a hard drive crash last year, so I must have lost the presentation then, but fortunately I still have the PDF. So I can at least continue with the PDF, and the PDF will also be made available to you on my tutor. Okay, so the outcomes, and let's talk about the assessment criteria, because they basically link to each other. So you need to be able to define emotional intelligence. You have to be able to tell me about the importance of emotional intelligence given the skills required for a project manager. So you need to be able to discuss that. The 4 constructs of emotional intelligence, namely self-awareness, social awareness, self-management, and relationship management, are defined and discussed. And then lastly, the principles of emotional intelligence are applied to various project situations. Okay, and so, as I've said before, this is an applied course. So the focus of tests and exams will obviously be on the application. And you will also see when you go through the cases that you're going to do in your groups, you will see that it's very much to do with application. All right, so what is emotional intelligence? So when you look at a human being, the iceberg that sticks up above the ice is normally the IQ of the person. All right, so when we are at school and when we get measured and tested at school, what do? They test our IQs. And they tell us, no, you have a high IQ, so you should be successful in life. Or they tell you, no, you have a low IQ, so you're not going to be successful in life. Does that happen to anybody? My husband failed his first IQ test he ever wrote. Because they walked into the class and they handed out the forms. They didn't properly explain, or he wasn't paying attention, and so he ended up drawing aeroplanes and making a paper aeroplane out of his IQ questionnaire. And I think he scored something like 60 on his first IQ test. Right, but so, and the interesting thing is the ancient Egyptians believed that the heart was the center of intelligence and emotion. So they thought very little about the brain. So during mummification, they actually removed the brain from the body and threw it away. Whereas the heart and all the other organs were placed in special little containers that were placed in the sarcophagus. You know, the sarcophagus is that big stone crypt that they used to put the mummies into. Now, when they find the mummies, there's always 4 separate containers, and they contain the liver and the brain. Not the brain, the heart, and the kidneys, and I forget what the lungs are put in there. The brain, they used to put a substance into the brain which liquefied it, and then they would suck it out through the nose. Okay, so that's not in the slides. That's just the yucky part of my presentation for today. Okay, so that's what they thought. They thought that intelligence and emotion sit in the heart. And what the latest research into emotional intelligence has shown is that you can get 2 guys that have exactly the same qualification. Let's say we have 2 guys that have finished their BTech in project management, and both of them passed cum laude, which I hope all of you are going to do. And when they did their IQ test, so the intelligence quotient test, they had very similar IQs. Maybe there's 2 points difference on the IQ test. But one of them is a very, very, very highly successful project manager. He manages multidisciplinary projects with many, many different stakeholders, and his projects are always on time, on budget, and according to the specification. The other guy has exactly the same qualification, very similar IQ, but his projects fail all the time. And so this is why people then started doing research into EQ, or emotional intelligence, because they wanted to understand what's the difference between those two people. All right? And what they found was the difference was basically what we call emotional intelligence. And so a lot of further research was then done into this animal called emotional intelligence, and it was then broken down into the various competencies that we will be talking about today. And the good news is that emotional intelligence is something that can be improved. Right? So when I was a child, they pretty much said the IQ that you were born with was your IQ. Later research and more modern research says no, that's not quite true. You can develop your intelligence, but it can only develop up to a certain point. All right? Whereas your emotional intelligence, it's up to you what you want to do with it and whether you want to develop it further. Okay, so why are we talking about emotional intelligence? For Pete's sake, this is a project management class. Okay? So does somebody want to tell me why are we talking about emotional intelligence? Besides the fact that you voted for it. Yes, Paula.
It's because in project management we deal with human beings.
Yes.
And human beings behave and react differently to situations. So you need to be able as project manager to manage different behaviors and different reactions to different situations.
Okay, so essentially, what Paula says is true, that projects are done by people. We spend a lot of money in equipment and infrastructure and stuff like that we need for the project, but essentially what makes the project fail or succeed is the people. All right. And that's why emotional intelligence is a very important topic for project managers. So you were right when you voted for this one. It is a very important topic. And my research that I did for my master's actually showed that 95% of the respondents, out of about 400 respondents that included project managers and project team members, reiterated that emotional intelligence is important. So if we look at some of the latest project management research, and you look at the research that's done on project success, who of you did research last semester, project research? Okay, so remember I made you read on project success. Okay, do you remember that in the literature on project success, they talk about the hard skills and they talk about the soft skills? All right, and the soft skills that they talk about when it comes to project management are things like leadership, communication, political awareness, the ability to influence top management, the ability to influence the client and the end user, conflict resolution, ability to deal with change, and team management skills. Now, as we go through the topic of emotional intelligence, you will see that especially when we come to the management of other people's emotions and the management of the behavior of others, you will see that these come out very strongly. Okay, so what is emotional intelligence? So the definition is a capacity for recognizing our own and others' feelings. So the first bit is about recognizing feelings. And then the second one is for motivating ourselves and for managing our emotions, both within ourselves and in our relationships. Okay, so it's about recognition in myself and in others, and it's about management in myself and in others. All right. So according to Goldman, it's not that IQ and technical skills are irrelevant. No, they're very important, but mainly as threshold capabilities. So you have these two guys that both have a BTech project management cum laude. So both of them should be able to manage projects. They have the skills. But why is the one more successful than the other one? Right, and that's where EQ comes into it. Right, so there are various models. Now what happened? Don't do automatic updates when I'm lecturing. I will throw you out the window. Okay, so there are various models and various scholars that have written on emotional intelligence, but one of the most widely used and adopted models is the one that was developed by Goldman. And he published a book in 2001 that was called Emotional Intelligence in the Workplace. And my study that I did was in 2003. All right, but the interesting thing is that at the time when I did my study, there was nothing in the project management literature about emotional intelligence for project managers. But now, in the last sort of 10 years, you will actually find some literature on that, even in the main core project management journals. Right, so as I said, so Goldman's model addressed emotional intelligence in the workplace, and as I said, there is the recognition part, which is about self-awareness, so being able to recognize my own emotions, and about social awareness. Okay, so I can see that Paule is looking very confused at the moment, because he's sitting there like that and he's like looking at these slides. All right? I can see that he's bored with me. Because he's sitting with his hands in his pockets and he's looking at me. No, that's not true. But so you see that social awareness is about being able to see other people's emotions. Then regulation is self-management and relationship management. Okay, so there's a lot of information on this slide, but I'm not going to go through all that information here because in my presentation that follows, I do go into the detail of each of these. All right, so the first thing is self-awareness. Let me just see. I haven't got the... Sorry, I'll just quickly find it for you. This is what happens when you have to go to stupid meetings. I hate meetings. Okay, so this is a typical example of a dog that is not emotionally self-aware. Very often we can understand what things are by looking at what they are not. Very self-aware because he doesn't even realize that it's his own leg that's busy attacking him. All right, so emotional self-awareness is the ability to recognize one's own feelings and how these feelings affect one's performance. Okay, so if I can go back to my horrible meeting that I had today, I knew before I walked into the meeting that this meeting was going to frustrate me. So I made sure that I took enough stuff with that I could do in the meeting because otherwise I really just want to throw people out of windows. And after the meeting, I sat myself down and I said, okay, but now you're going to lecture tonight and it's going to be fun, so forget about that. Right? And that's because I was aware of my own feelings. When I was younger, and especially when I was a young project manager, I did not have very good self-awareness. So if I had sat in a meeting like that, I would have walked in here and I would have shouted at all of you and I would have thrown you out the window. Okay? And you're not the people I actually want to throw out the window. You nice people. Okay? So that's emotional self-awareness. And it all starts with emotional self-awareness. Because if you're not aware of your own feelings, you cannot even start to try and manage them. Right, then the second part of self-awareness is accurate self-assessment. So you can see, I've got a silly cat that looks exactly like this cat. And when she looks in the mirror, I can bet you that's what she sees. Do you want to know what my cat's name is? Her name is Taliban, because she's a one-cat terror campaign. Oh, she's naughty. I've never had such a naughty cat before, and it's all because she thinks she's a lion. I've got Shar-Pei, so they like this big. They're quite big dogs, and she will sit around a corner and wait. And if the Shar-Pei comes past, then she'll jump on them. You know what I mean? Like she's this size and they're this size, so she really thinks she's a lion. All right, now, contrary to popular belief, where we think that, we should always tell ourselves we're so great, we're so good, that's not actually the best way of doing it. The accurate self-assessment is the ability to accurately assess one's own abilities. So in other words, know, am I a kitten or am I a lion? All right? And once I know I am a kitten, there are things in being a kitten that I can exploit. So rather focus on those strengths that I have, like being so cute when I'm a kitten, than try and act like a lion, because I'm not really a lion. Okay, and it's also about seeking out feedback. So I might think that, I'm the most beautiful woman in the world, and, I'm actually supposed to be Miss World, but other people look at me and say, no. Okay, but so that's seek out feedback. Seek to understand yourself better by also understanding what other people see about you. And learn from your mistakes. So do you remember last semester in PJP AT, one of the things we did was we did a close out. Why did we do that? Sorry? To capture lessons learned. Why do we capture lessons learned? So that we can improve. All right. So you can see that the whole process of project management has accurate self-assessment built into it. Know where to improve and know when to work with others with complementary strengths. Okay. So my strength is not administration. So I make sure that I have an admin assistant, and this one actually even sits in my office and does my admin for me. Right? And she's brilliant. She's very good at it. It makes her very happy to do it. Makes me very unhappy. All right. But I know that about myself. And many years back, I didn't know that about myself. And so I would frustrate myself and I would frustrate my team because I was never on top of my administration. Not that I am that much better, but at least I've got someone who helps me now. Okay, so that's accurate self-assessment. Then the next one is self-confidence. So now that I know whether I'm a kitten or a lion, now I must have confidence in the abilities that I do have. Right, because all of us have strengths. And it's all about assessing what your strengths are and then having confidence in those strengths. Okay, I know that I'm a good presenter. So that's something I know that if things aren't going well, if I go and do a presentation, man, then I feel much better. All right. But I also know that there are other things that I'm not so good at. Okay, but I try to pick my career path. I've always picked to try and maximize on my strengths. Right, so those are basically the competencies of self-awareness. Can anybody tell me what they are? Emotional self-awareness, yes. What's the kitten and the lion? Accurate self-assessment, right? And then what's the last one? Self-control. Sorry? Self-confidence. Okay. All right. See, it's not so difficult. You must just remember the pictures. This one I do have. Oh no, I'm in the wrong. Sorry. Okay, so here is again an example of not self-control. So the bird is saying, Freddy sucks, Freddy sucks.
Programmable ovens and other intelligent products for your kitchen. Newer, always better.
Okay, so Freddy's sleeping on the couch because he couldn't control himself in front of the silly bird. Okay, so emotional self-control is the ability to remain unfazed in a stressful situation and the ability to deal with a hostile person without lashing out in return. Okay, so I get to practice emotional self-control, especially around predicate day. Because around predicate day, I get these students that walk into my office and go, I'm failing the subject and it's all your fault. Alright, so I can now, how can I react? I can react back and say, no, it's not my fault. Look, I'll take back, show you the attendance register. You weren't there. Why did you do so badly in the class? I mean, in the class test. Why didn't you submit the assignment? Is that going to help? Is that going to solve the problem? Okay, so I have to remain in control of myself. And I can't lash out and shout at the student because students these days also have rights. When I was a student, we didn't have rights. And so I have to be nice. But if the student doesn't deserve predicates, I still have to not give the person predicates. Okay, so it's not about just giving in. Being emotionally intelligent is not about being a doormat and letting people run over you. It's about remaining in control of your own emotions and managing them. Okay, so trustworthiness. Oh, sorry, let me just pick these up. Okay, so trustworthiness is the ability to let others know one's values and principles, intentions and feelings, and acting in ways that are consistent with them. Right, so if I walk into class and every class I come and preach Christianity to you, and I tell you, you know, that you must love your neighbors, that you must love each other, and that you shouldn't have extramarital affairs, and you know, I tell you all of this stuff. This is what's coming out of my mouth. But when you go to a nightclub on a Saturday evening, you find me there dancing with a toy boy who's half my age, who's obviously not my husband. Am I being trustworthy? Okay, so So that example was just to wake you up. Are you awake now? Can somebody give me an example of trustworthiness that's necessary for a project manager? Why would a project manager need trustworthiness? Yes.
Because it's not trustworthiness, it's likely to keep some necessary information to themselves that might be needed to empower the team to perform their roles actually.
Okay, so in other words, you always have to act towards your team in a trustworthy manner.
Yeah.
And you always have to give them the information they need in order to be empowered. And the first time that your team thinks that they cannot trust you, that's the last time you're getting their cooperation. Right. Because just like in my example where I'm dancing in the nightclub, you will now next time not believe a word that I say. In the same way, if we don't act in a trustworthy manner towards our team, they're not going to trust us, and so they're not going to tell us the truth. Okay, and remember, project managers are very, very reliant on the truth. Because if your project is in trouble, you need to know sooner rather than later. And if your team is not trusting you and lying to you, then you're the one whose head is going to be on the block at the end of the day. Okay, conscientiousness. When I thought about conscientiousness, I thought that a miscryer, what's this in English? What's a miscryer in English? This little chochoki? Dung beetle. I thought that a dung beetle must be one of the most conscientious animals or insects out there. Because it has a really awful job, but it conscientiously does it every day. Alright, and it's basically about being careful, scrupulous, and self-disciplined in attending to responsibilities. So if the project plan has to be updated today and the team says, come on, let's go out for a beer, probably is a good point to say, sorry guys, next time. Right, because I need to be conscientious and I have to make sure that my side of it is clean. Because then the next time that they're in that situation, they'll think, oh yes, the project manager did put the team first and was conscientious about doing their work. Okay, adaptability. You can't direct the wind, but you can adjust your sails. Right, so adaptability is the ability to let go of old assumptions and adapt the way in which one operates. Now, I think one of the great examples of adaptability is our great rainbow nation. If you think about it, almost 20 years ago, we were all at each other's throats and we were all seeing each other as the enemy. But in the last 20 years, we've had to adapt the way we see each other. And we've had to let go of those old ideas that were programmed into our heads. Okay, and I think that in a project environment, especially if you are coming from a specific discipline, say I'm a software programmer and I did IT engineering at university. So that's the paradigm that I operate from, and I think in code, essentially. All right, so if this, then that, else do that. You understand? And now, on this web page that I'm building, I have to work with a graphic designer. The graphic designer essentially thinks in pictures. Right, so this person is essentially crazy, according to my worldview. All right, so if I seriously think that this person is actually crazy and they don't know what they're doing and they don't know what they're talking about, just because they're a graphic designer, my project is going to fail. All right. So adaptability is about being able to let go of the assumptions and saying, okay, let's see, what can a graphic designer bring to the party? And at the end of the day, you'll actually find that, wow, you know, if I can be adaptable and I can listen to other people's point of view, we probably can get further in the project. And so you can see adaptability is more and more a competence that's needed by project managers, because projects are becoming more and more multidisciplined. And the more multidisciplined our projects become, the more different people come onto our projects. And we might even end up working with people that have blue hair. The person with the blue hair might even be the project manager. Do you understand? And so one has to let go of your old assumptions. Okay, so achievement drive. Oopsie. This is probably not a good slide. Okay, this was last year's slides. At least I did say, and it was good then. Okay, so my slideshow did not optimistically strive to continually improve performance. Otherwise, I would have changed this slide. All right, but achievement drive is about saying, all right, so we did the project was a success, but still, what can we learn from it? How can we improve? How can we do it better next time? And if you think about the whole way in which project management is designed and the tools and techniques that we use, project management is all about improving achievement and about making sure that the next time we're better. Right. I'll have to change that slide. Okay, so initiative is the ability to act before being forced to do so by external events. So here is a very good example of a dog that takes initiative. Okay, so it should be obvious to you by now that I should actually have been a vet, because I love animals. So all my slides tonight are to do with animals. Right, but do you see that the dog took the initiative to blame the cat before his owner came along and said, "Who stole my sandwich?" Right, and as project managers, again, it's about making sure that you know what are the latest tools and techniques out there, and evaluating them and saying, can it improve the performance in my organization, and doing things to implement those tools before the outside market forces force you to do that. I'll give you an example of where I've tried to take initiative, and that's the career day that I made you guys do. Because there are 3 pillars according to which academics are measured. The one is teaching, the other one is research, and the last one is community engagement. Now, most universities in South Africa put a lot of focus on the teaching and the research, and less focus on the community engagement. But one of these days, the minister is going to wake up one morning and say, I think that now it's time for the universities to do this community engagement thing. Right? So I took the initiative to put community engagement into my courses already, so that I can decide how is it going to happen before the university wakes up and they make me do it. Do you understand? And so, as a project manager, it's also about being on the bleeding edge of technology. So understanding what is the newest technology out there, what can we do with this project, where can we go? And it's not about necessarily always implementing the bleeding edge, but it's about understanding the bleeding edge, so that if you force, or so that you can take or get your team up to speed to the bleeding edge before you're forced to do so by the external environment. Oh, sorry. Okay, no, this one we will skip because they are the cases that you're going to do. All right, so that was self-management. So self-management is about managing my own emotions, all right? So firstly, I have to be aware what they are, and secondly, I have to manage them. So I need to have self-control, I need to take initiative, I have to be adaptable, and now I forgot the others. I have to strive for achievement, I have to be conscientious and trustworthy. All right. Okay, so now I've got myself under control. I understand myself, I manage myself. But now I go into the real world. And in the real world, there are horrible people. Okay? So now, what am I going to do? Well, I now have to understand those horrible people. So the first thing is social awareness. So the first competence there, and again it's a dog, empathy is an astute awareness of the emotions, concerns, and needs of others. Okay, so this is not sympathy in that we walk in that person's shoes. It's empathy in that we try to understand where is that other person coming from. All right? Why is the person always late for work? Is it because they're just lazy and not conscientious? Or is it maybe because they have to drop their child off at school every morning? And so it's impossible for them to get there at 8 o'clock. Do you understand what I'm saying? So empathy is about understanding the other person's emotions. And if you're not trustworthy and if the other person does not trust you, they're never going to tell you. Okay, because they're always going to think, that person will never understand me, so I'm not even going to go there. Okay, the next part of social awareness is service orientation. So this is a story of this monkey that was in a big fire in a building. I think it was in China. And this monkey saw this dog in trouble, this puppy in trouble, and the monkey went and saved the puppy. And so I think that's service orientation because it's the competence to identify the client's often unstated needs and then match them with a product or service. So you can see that that is very important for a project manager. Because remember the very first class that I gave you, we had that picture of the tree. Do you remember the tree? Okay, yes. And this is what the client said they wanted, but this is what they needed. Okay. And the project manager is normally responsible to identify this unstated need, right? And a lot of that is about understanding people's body language, understanding people's tone of voice, understanding the hidden messages that is behind what people are telling you. Right, and there, of course, cultural awareness also comes into it. Because if I'm dealing with a black South African or a Chinese guy from China or a European person from America, there's differences in the body language. So I better understand if my client is from a different cultural background to myself, I better understand that because I need to factor that in. Okay, and then organizational awareness. I think I have this one. There it is.
Imagine you go to a company summer cruise, but this year you bring your Samsung Mini-Cap video recorder. The next day you show your boss some of the parts.
No man, sorry, I just want to turn up my volume. Where is the volume now? Huh? Is it? Okay, my volume is at maximum.
These special moments, you get a raise.
Okay, so he shows his boss the stuff and he gets a raise.
Your portable video music player. You get a company car.
So he
But the
shows the
company president
CFO
calls.
and he gets a new car.
You say you took some great video of him which you immediately send. You get a corner office.
And then he sends it to the CEO and he gets a corner office.
You use your Samsung LCD to show him. It's a cinematic experience. He puts you in charge of the Mediterranean.
And then he shows it to the chairman of the board and he gets him
In
in
one day the
integration.
trains, I hear you shot some great footage of the company cruise. I hope we bring that camera to the holiday party. And you say, I'd be delighted. With Samsung design and technology, it's not that hard
The
to
big boss
imagine.
says to him, my dear, you took such an interesting footage at the the company party. And he says, no, I'll bring my camera with next time. Okay, so do you think that this guy has organizational awareness? Why not?
Because of the information shared at the exact level in terms of organizational ethics.
Okay, so there's a question of also organizational ethics, but does he have organizational awareness? Does he know who is the right person in the organization to take a video of? He does. Okay, so one of the guys that writes a lot of books on human resource management and project management, Vita Verma, says that there are 3 levels or 3 ways in which one can be organizationally aware or organizationally unaware. So the first level is where you are a typical technical person and you have this beautiful project plan and it's beautifully done even with colors in Microsoft Project. And you're tracking the progress right down to the last day, and you are perfectly on budget, and you're convinced that you're meeting the client's specifications. And the next day your project is cancelled. Why? Because you were not organizationally aware. You did not know who in the organization is talking about the projects at the moment, what projects are important for the organization at the moment, what are the organizational strategies. Okay, so that is somebody who is an organizational ostrich, if we can put it like that. Because their head is in the bucket or in the sand, and they do what they're doing perfectly, but they're not aware that there's actually an organization in which this project is happening. Then, on the other side of the scale, we get the organizational shark. Now, this chap in this video is an organizational shark. So those are the guys that play the politics in the organization to build their own empire, or to make themselves look good, or to, at the end of the day, make them rise through the organization. The problem with people like that is they make a lot of enemies along the way. And so they get maybe to a certain point in the organization, but what do they say? Every cat gets his day. Yeah. So those people, at the end of the day, will get sorted out. All right. So as project managers, we do not want to be political sharks or organizational sharks. So what we do want to do is we want to have the ability to read the currents of emotions and political realities in groups, which allows individuals to form networks and wield influence no matter what their professional role. Because remember, when we spoke about organizational structures, one of the things is that most organizations operate projects in a matrix type structure. And in a matrix type structure, the project manager has the responsibility of getting the project done, but does not always have the authority, right? And so sometimes you have to use your influence in order to get the job done. But as long as you are using your organizational awareness for the good of the organization, that is when you are being emotionally intelligent. Okay? So you can abuse some of these emotional intelligence skills. And people that are narcissists and are megalomaniacs and people that are a little bit borderline personality, they know this. So they can act this beautifully. And you will think that they are the most genuine person but tomorrow they will stab you in the back. Right, and unfortunately with people like that, eventually they go through all the people that are around them, and then nobody wants to talk to them anymore. So, yeah.
So, but you mentioned that there was 3, and then you mentioned that.
Oh, okay. So the last one is basically where you have proper organizational awareness, and I haven't got an animal for that one. It's an organizational dog, because dogs are loyal, and they. Do you know what the difference between a dog and a cat is? Okay, so you come home, you feed a dog, you give it love, and the dog says, "Oh, this person must be a god because they look after me so well." You come home, you feed the cat, you give it attention when it feels like it, and the cat looks at you and says, "Oh, I must be a god because this person is looking after me so well." Right, so cats are definitely definitely on the shark side of organizational awareness, whereas dogs will do what's best for the organization. Happiness. I also get upset when people tell me there are 3 things, then they only tell me 2. And the worst is when it's the minister and you can't stop him in the middle of his sermon and say to him, "Hey, wait a minute." Yes, what's the 3rd one?
So with regards to organizational awareness, as you were talking about the shelter, but what happens in this regard, we find somebody who's trying to play the devil's advocate. They come to you, they go, "Oh my goodness, I heard the boss said this and this and that," and then behind your back they go back to the boss, "Oh, this is what this person is going to be doing." Because I found myself in that position at one time where they said, "Oh no, you need to take them to CCMA." Later, 5 minutes later, the CEO tells me, "Oh, I believe you're taking us to CCMA," and I'm like, "What?"
Yeah. But you see, this is...
It mostly happens with Indian people, sorry to say. Last year, I went to work for another organization, and this Indian woman, she wanted the position of my boss, and my boss did not have a backbone. So every time she would say certain things, I'm like, "Why are you saying this? But in the meeting, you say this." And I said this in an open platform to say, if I were to be working as a team and there are people who tend to go behind our back and say things behind to somebody else, that they are providing emotions, what does that say about the kind of organization? But needless to say, I just kind of think those people are just...
Well, the thing is, as I said, unfortunately, you will always find people like that, and you will always work with people like that. Okay? So yes. Yes. And sometimes, I always say to my students, sometimes the organizational culture is so bad, it's such a bad fit for you, that you end up having to leave the organization. So being emotionally intelligent is about understanding that about yourself, and understanding that this organization is toxic for me, and so either I must make a space for myself in the organization where I can operate, like for me to come and lecture is that space, or I have to leave the organization. Do you understand? And unfortunately, that's the reality. And all that we can do is we can try to be emotionally intelligent, and we can try and react in an emotionally intelligent way. And I know that that does make a difference. It does make a difference to the people around you. Because if they're backstabbing you and you're not backstabbing them back, they will sometimes, some of them will sit back and say, "Oh, okay, but now why?" Do you understand? And sometimes they will change the behavior.
Is it what really motivates that sort of behavior? Is it I want to get to the top, and they are counting other people?
No.
I just want to basically be the favorite, the CEO's pet.
Well, you must remember that we all have our baggage. So everybody comes into the work environment with their baggage. You know, their father didn't love them, or their mother didn't love them, or I'm serious. And or they were constantly teased at school, or they were seen as such and such, or I mean, we all have our baggage. And all that we can do is to try and not let that baggage affect the way that we operate in the work environment. But sometimes you have to leave.
Because I think it demonstrates immaturity
Yes.
in terms of your emotions, because
Yes.
now you're trying to play your own
Yes.
laundry in the work environment,
Yes.
failures to impact everybody's work environment.
But remember, if you're not emotionally self-aware and you don't know that about yourself, you're going to continue doing that. Okay, and unfortunately, the best thing to do is to motivate for that person to go on emotional intelligence training.
But now remember, Professor, for project managers, we find that when we get into organizations, we find people that have been there for the longest time with no formal education, and then you come in and you're trying to bring in Professor Paris theories, and they happen to be the ones who have the signing off. So as much as you can push as much as you want, but you're not going to get it.
Now, unfortunately, I have left organizations before. I can think of one very clear example where I had to leave the organization because it was just so toxic. Because the functional manager I was working with had so many issues, But I mean, at the end of the day, all these things teach you something, and you learn, you learn through that.
What issues, when you say issues? Can you just
Okay, this specific person was having, it's very sordid. This specific person, I was called in to replace the project manager because the project manager had physically thrown the client out of the building. By physically, I mean he'd taken him and, okay. So the project manager was removed from his position and I was asked to take over. Then the whole sordid thing came out and it transpired that the functional manager was having an affair with the project manager, and the client and the functional manager's husband worked with the client. So it was very sordid. All right, and that was where I just said, okay, this is where the bus stops. I've done profession, and I mean, I tried to professionally, on a professional basis, fix the situation, and I could only fix it up until a certain level, and that's when I said, no, either I'm going to end up in Westkoppies or I'm moving on. Okay. Yeah, and that's unfortunately, projects are all about people. All right. Okay, so then relationship management is the last main heading. Ooh, I must go quicker now. Right, so one of them is developing others. I forgot my dolls again. All right, but do you all know these little dolls? Okay, they called babushkas, and they're nesting dolls actually, because they all fit one into the other. Now, people think that when they are developing others, what they should be doing is they should be making smaller replicas of themselves. All right? But developing others is not about that. Developing others is about being the smallest doll and hoping that the people that you are developing will go to bigger heights and will achieve more than what you achieved. All right? So it's about it's about sensing people's developmental needs and bolstering their abilities. Now, as project managers, we don't always have the budget or the authority to send somebody on training, but we normally have the influence. So we can put a word into the ear of the functional manager, and we can say to the functional manager, hey, this person needs this. And then unfortunately it's up to that person to then take the opportunity. Another good example of this is years ago I had a secretary, and she had three of us. She was the secretary for three of us, and she didn't have a driver's license. Now, the organization where I worked had cars available, and if she had a driver's license, she would have been able to make my life easier by going to deliver tenders and things like that. So I then went to the HR and I said to her, this person needs to get a driver's license, but she doesn't have the financial means to do this. And so the HR actually arranged for her to go for driving lessons, and unfortunately at the end of the day, this person didn't use that opportunity. Okay, and she still doesn't have a driver's license. But do you see? So I mean, sometimes you have success stories and sometimes you don't have success stories. Okay, but the person is still a very good friend of mine. Okay, so at the end of the day, but at the end of the day, it's about making sure that people are developed as far as you can.
Does it go in the same basket as the saying, a leader produces leaders or a leader leaves leaders behind?
Yes. Yes, I would say that that's the same thing. It's not about replicating yourself, it's about empowering people to be the best they can be. Yes.
I think that can be easily done by a person who walked the journey and is almost finished with it. Like yourself, when you're developing us, you will never challenge you at the certain stage. It's serious stage, yeah?
Oh, you can challenge
No, because in the real world, the reason why people don't share enough information to develop is because they still have a long path to walk. So the fear of overriding comes in.
But that's also really for you as a young project manager, you must understand what your weaknesses are and where you need them. And yes, if you are lucky enough to have a boss that has emotional intelligence and will develop you, then that's lucky. But sometimes one has to make your own decisions. And remember, I am a white woman, and I worked for 15 years in the defense industry, where you walk into the meeting and the general says to you, "Thank you very much, I'll have coffee." So you go and make the coffee and you come back and you say to the general, "Okay, can we start our meeting?" Do you understand? So I know what you're talking about. But one has to also do these things in a nice way, but you also have to strive for bettering yourself and for achievement. All right. And sometimes, it's not always about the money. When I decided that I'd had enough of being a project manager and I now want to go into academia, I had to take a quarter cut in my salary. Right? But I knew that this is where I wanted to be. I wanted to be an academic. So sometimes you sacrifice things to achieve to do what you want to do what makes you happy. All right. Okay, that's why I drive a 13-year-old car. Okay, then influence, and we've spoken about that already, but it's the ability to handle and manage emotions effectively in other people and so to be persuasive. So, as we said, project managers don't always have the authority, but you have the responsibility. So you have to learn to get people, to influence people to do what you want them to do. And normally you do that by enthusiasm. Because if you show that you're enthusiastic about the project and about the outcome of the project, think about the career day. When I first gave it to you guys and you first looked at it, I know that you were very unhappy in your little hearts. And you were thinking, oh no, what is this professor wanting us to do? And yet, when you went and you did it, you all had a great time. Am I right? So, do you understand? But I influenced you, and I had no control over you by giving you marks even for being there on the day. But 95% of students were there, and you had a good time. And that's what influence is all about. So it's not about being an elephant. Because if the elephant disagrees with you, it just goes stomp. All right, as a project manager, you don't have that weight to throw around. So you better learn to be subtle and to use your influence. I don't know if I have that video now. Let's quickly look. No, I don't. Okay, so communication is the ability to be effective in the give and take of emotional information, to deal with difficult issues in straightforward ways, to listen well, and to foster open communication and to stay receptive. Okay, so the first day Pale walked into my class, he was late. So this is not a true story, okay? He was late. So He walked into my class and I said, "Why are you late for my class? I can't stand it when students are late." Okay, now Polly has a problem. His father passed away and he has to submit an assignment. Okay, and he really couldn't do the assignment and he needs to get the marks for the assignment, otherwise he's not going to get predicate. What do you think Polly is going to do? Is he going to come to me? No. Okay, because I closed the door because I didn't stay receptive. Right, because the very first day I already put him on his guard that I do not tolerate lateness. So, as a project manager, remember, you create the culture in your team as well. You don't necessarily have the power to create the culture in your organization, but you can change the culture in your team. Right. And as we said before, you need trust. You need the trust of your team, because if they've messed up, they need to be able to come and tell you that they did. Right? And it's not about letting people walk all over you. So it's not about saying, "Oh, shame, let's give the student predicate." No. It's about admitting with the person, "Okay, you messed up here, how can we fix it?" Right, and that is what emotional intelligence is. And that is what communication is all about, is making sure that your team is comfortable in coming to talk to you, and also, which is something that took me years to learn, to not just let everything come straight from your mouth and not use your ears. Right. So when somebody comes to you with a problem, listen first. It's like the little boy who went to his father and said to his father, "Daddy, where do I come from?" And the father said to him, "Go and ask your mother." So he went and asked his mother, and his mother said, "No, go and ask your father." So he came back to his father and said, "Daddy, where do I come from?" And so the father started and explained, everything about the birds and the bees and the nectar and the pollen and, the whole toot. And then the little boy looked at his father and said, "Oh, Johnny says he comes from Johannesburg." And that's what open communication is about, is making sure that you're addressing the right problem. Okay, see, there's my cat again. Conflict management, the ability to spot trouble as it is brewing and to take steps to calm those involved. Okay, so something that works very well here often is humor. So everybody's getting like all tensed up and, and then you just throw in that little joke or that little snide remark and suddenly everybody's just, "Oh, okay." Right, and the other thing about this is, look, it's conflict management. And it's about taking steps. So very often, especially technical people, tend to ignore problems. Right? So I see that you don't like me and that you are being bitchy to me or about me behind my back, but I'm just keeping my head down and I'm just doing my job. All right. But at some stage, that thing is going to erupt. Because at some stage, that person is going to push you that millimeter too far. And then your reaction is going to be completely out of step with what the actual situation is. Right. So either you must manage or you must address it with the person, or you must address it within yourself. So you must say, "Okay, that's fine. I'm fine with it that she's bitchy about me. I can't decide how she must think. If that's how she wants to think, well, fine. I can't change that." Right. And then, of course, have as little to do with the person as possible. But you hear what I'm saying. But so it's about take steps. Don't. And as a project manager, if you see that 2 of your team members are going to come to blows in the next day or 3, get them in a room together and sort it out. Don't just wait and hope and pray that conflict is going to go away. It's not. It's like an earthquake. Okay, so if all of us had visionary leadership, just imagine what we could do to the world and how we could make it a better world. But basically, visionary leadership is the ability to inspire others to work together towards common goals. So, beautiful about projects, we're all working towards the same goal, hopefully. So good project managers can be visionary leaders and can explain the goal in such a way that everybody wants to get there. You know, it's like telling somebody to go to hell and hoping they'll enjoy the trip. You know, that's what a visionary leader can do. Okay, then catalyzing change. The ability to recognize the need for change, to remove barriers, challenge the status quo, and enlist others in the pursuit of new initiatives. So here again is a good example of how not to change, or not to react to change.
Hello, it says here you sell double glazing. Do you have a piece in stock? Let's say 4x8 metres? Only encrusted glass. Encrusted glass! No, I'm sure I've noticed it. No, sorry. Oh, you stole straight away. Oh, brilliant. How much is it then? Including putty? Oh, not, okay. No problem, I'll keep looking. Thanks, ta-ra.
Okay, so the guy with the red is not a change catalyst. he doesn't know how to remove barriers and challenge the status quo and enlist others in the pursuit of new initiatives. Right, and that's what emotionally intelligent people do, is they catalyze change. So they see when there is the need for change. Okay? And that is basically the end of my story for tonight. And now you have 20 minutes to get into your groups. And I have a handout here with the group assignments for the groups. There are, there's a handout here, which, as I said in the beginning, is the chapter that I'm writing on emotional intelligence for the book. So there are at the moment 4 cases in the book, and so I want you to answer the questions related to those 4 cases. And tomorrow I'm going to finalize the last case. I was just not quite happy with it yet. So I'm going to finalize the last case, and I'm then going to put it on my tutor. Alright, so you basically will have 5 cases that you have to do. And you will see from the marks that case 5 is the biggest one. Right, because the first one is 10, then 20, 20, 20, and then the last one is 50. Okay. And I don't think I added correctly. Oopsie, I didn't add correctly. The total should be 170. Right. But then you will also be assessed on your Microsoft project plan, your Agile project management, your reflection, and your spelling, grammar, and layout. Sure. Right. So here is the assignment with the cases. I will give one, I've got enough for one for each group. So I suggest that move into your groups, and I'll give each group one of these. And what you need to then do is you need to start planning how you are going to tackle this. Right? So there are little bits of paper here, if anybody wants. And I've even got press stick, and you can take some of that paper over there, and you can start deciding what all the what you call it, the sprint backlog should look like. Right? And by next week, you should be able to put it into a Microsoft project plan, because next week we're going to the lab and I'm going to help you to add activities to the project plan. So you need to bring that with next time so that you can put that in and give you good responsibilities. But I suggest that you also start working on the cases, because you have this week and next week to work on this assignment. Right, so it's due the Sunday before, not the next class, the class after. Does that make sense? Yeah. Alright, so each group can have one. So tell me, where's a group? You're a group. There are 3 people that added their names to the list. That means you are not registered. Please. Next week, bring me your proof of registration.
I am.
I'm not paid.
You want to adopt the child? I think we have to Yes.
I was not certain due to the buzzer when the house coming for this program. So I just got the buzzer again on Friday. So I can see they've added. So I don't know, there are more. In fact, they've added some more people. So there are now 6.
5, 6. Okay. You better find another group that's got
That's good.
this group looks like this. Guys, how many of you got in your group? 5. Will you adopt another member? Why not? They'll adopt you.
So this case study, what is it all about? Do we need to do this? This is the only case study that we need to read.
Yes, it is in the...
So, okay, after reading this, what do we then get to talk about? Those are the questions. Okay. So, when do we need to submit this? By when do we need to submit this? Because what we wanted to do is to split the work amongst ourselves.
Yes. Next week we're going to
go to the lab.
Yes, and you're going to have a chance to plan and work on the assignment, and then the 18th it has to be.
Oh, all right. Okay. Okay. So now we just need to just allocate tasks.
We have to meet we just say not every time. At least used to it. So if we say so it can be different all the time.